All right, hello everybody, and yeah, it's tough to think up actual topics. I'm trying to make more videos, so maybe things will be a little bit more interesting for you guys, or anybody that happens to stop by this channel. I and let's just. I saw a video by Side Scrollers earlier today about one of these translators, one of these localizers, Katrina Leonodicus, basically putting her foot in her mouth on Twitter and saying that, oh, you're not qualified to translate these things. And if you think I made a mistake, clearly I'm not the one that made a mistake because I'm trained and I know Japanese. And oh man, these localizers, they piss me off. Because guess what? It's not actually that hard to know enough Japanese to tell whether a translation is, close or whether words are being added. You don't need to understand every word in a sentence to know that the word patriarchy doesn't appear in the sentence. And so I just wanted to kind of, talk a little bit about translation because I'm not fluent in Japanese, especially not speaking. I'm actually a better reader than I am a speaker because I never have any practice to speak it. But I did study Japanese for a couple of years in elementary school. That's a fun story, actually, because I moved to a place called Garden City in Michigan, and they had, I think, 4 or 5 different elementary schools. I was in 4th grade at the time, and each of the elementary schools did a different language, and the one that I went to did Japanese. So from 4th grade through 7th grade, when I moved again, I was learning rudimentary Japanese, hiragana, katakana, words here and there, a little bit of cultural stuff. Had, a couple of different teachers, and so, that was fun. And after that, I continued kind of studying on my own. When I went to college, I studied Japanese for 3 years there, and I've continued studying not amazingly well, but decently well over the last, oh goodness, I finished university in 2006, so it's been almost 20 years, and it's kind of a hobby. It's not something that I do all the time, but it is something that I do on occasion. And if I turn here, you can see that there's a bunch of stuff there. Some of it is in native Japanese, and I'll read it that way. I can read Japanese novels reasonably well. It's just slow as hell, but it can be done. And that's just with the amount of training that I've had myself, which is not all that much, and the amount of practice on my own that I do by myself, which is again not all that much. And so, number one, I wanted to show you guys a couple of resources, books that I've used to help me do reading and translation stuff better. The first one, the most important book for me, is this one. This is the NTC's new Japanese-English Character Dictionary, which, while it doesn't contain a huge number of characters, only, the number that it contains is not all of the characters that are in common use in Japanese. It contains a good number of them, and the entries are very detailed with different readings and pronunciations and implications and stuff like that. So this is a super incredible book if you're trying to learn some Japanese, or just trying to translate something piecewise because you don't know that much Japanese and you want to learn more. I used the textbooks that we used when I was in college were called Genki. They're still used today. They're decent. You'll get a decent amount of vocabulary that's good for everyday use out of those books. I also read, oh goodness, what's his name? He passed away recently. He was kind of like America's greatest envoy to Japan. Seward, I'm pretty sure. I forget his first name. No, it was Jack Seward. And he wrote Easy Japanese, and it's not a super detailed book that's going to get you deep into the language, but it will give you a lot of fun reading because he was a very engaging writer. Because this doesn't contain all the characters that I need, I also have one of these. And this contains at least 3,000 characters, as well as radicals. If you're going to start learning kanji, you're going to need to understand how radicals work. And then another thing that... So when localizers say that their job is so hard, What they're usually referring to is one of two things. Number one, word order. Japanese word order is different from English word order. In English, we say the subject, verb, object. I went to the store, right? In Japanese, it's actually subject, object, verb. So if I was going to be explicit, I would say, 私は mise ni ikimashita. Again, my speaking is really bad, so forgive me for my terrible pronunciation there. But that is literally, as for me, subject, the store to, mise ni, right? Object, verb, ikimashita, I went, or went. That's one of the things that makes translation of Japanese a little bit difficult, because when you change word orders around, the way that things sound kind of gets a little funky sometimes, especially with complex sentences. There's also, I said two, but I actually mean three. Number two is the very large amount of implication in Japanese language, usually. For instance, when I say, 私は店に行きました, or 店へ行きました, that's not actually the way that a Japanese person would say it, because the it was me who did it is kind of usually implied. Unless it's somebody else, if it's not somebody else, or even if it is somebody else sometimes, you would just say mise ikimashita, right? Went, the store to went. And so word order can be a very confusing thing, and Japanese sentence structure is different as a result. So it makes it a little bit harder to just take a sentence in Japanese and translate it word for word into English, because you need to flip things around, and sometimes things don't quite mix. Sometimes the puzzle pieces don't quite fit together, if you catch my drift. For a sentence as simple as the example I just came up with off the top of my head, yes, it's easy enough to make that translation, but as the sentence structure gets more complicated, it gets a lot more difficult. Japanese also has a lot of slightly different grammar things that go on that you have to watch out for and you have to know about. Actually, do I have that somewhere? There's a particle dictionary by Kodansha. So I was gonna, number three. I'm sorry I'm so disorganized, but I just kind of threw this together on the spur of the moment. Number three, idioms. This is a very good introductory book for Japanese idioms. Because there are a lot of Japanese idioms that you can almost translate to English word for word, but there are a lot of them that you cannot. And this one is cool because it gives you not just a definition, a translation, but it also gives you a lot of additional context and stuff like that about specific idioms. And so actually the one on this page is a pretty good example. If you wanted to call someone a crackpot, a loony, a lunatic, a madman, a maniac, a nut, a psycho, a screwball, insanity, madness, temporarily, crazy, insane, nuts, off one's rocker, way out there. One way in Japanese that you could say that is kichigai. There it is. And the literal translation is ki, as in your spirit, is different. Kichigai. And so and there's more idioms than this for calling someone a crazy person in Japanese, but this is one of them. And this is one that you couldn't translate directly. You wouldn't say his spirit is different. You'd say he's nuts or something like that. And this is number three of what localizers point to when they say, my job is so hard. And it's not really that bad, because most of these idioms can be translated to a similar English idiom that works out pretty well. So, yeah, what I will say is that the vast majority of these arrogant localizers who claim that their jobs, that what they do is so hard, most of what they're doing is trying to gaslight you in two ways. Number one, they want to gaslight you into believing that what they're doing is really, really hard. It's not. Japanese grammar is actually pretty simple. They don't have a whole lot of crazy verb tenses and conjugations. They don't have a whole lot of really weird little parts of speech for different words to be. As you start learning Japanese, you start to realize that every adjective is actually just an adjective form of a verb, and sometimes verbs get used that way. I'm being a little bit slapdash here, but there's a lot of condensation in the Japanese language as to language parts, as opposed to English, or goodness forbid, like a serious romance language where you have multiple different kinds of conjugation for who you're talking about with every verb, stuff like that. So to review, so that's the number one way that they gaslight you, is that it's not actually that hard to learn enough Japanese to translate these things, and do a pretty decent job of it, as long as the thing that you're translating is not too complicated, or doesn't include so many like archaic kanji that you end up spending half an hour at the dictionary every page. So number one, Japanese isn't as hard to translate as they say it is. There are the three things that I talked about earlier that make it a little harder than, say, Spanish, but they're not overwhelming obstacles. And the number two way in which they gaslight you is because what they are trying to do, what makes it hard for them, is putting in all of the crazy social commentary that they want to put in, and minimizing any messages that they find personally offensive. And, this is not the way that you translate something. For goodness sake, if I were to go and do a modern translation of Marx's Kapital, I wouldn't gut the book, because even though everything in the book is practically wrong, I still wouldn't want to gut the book as because of my personal feelings about it. Stuff like that. And a lot of the time what they're trying to do is make something that should be relatively timeless into something that is absolutely a product of its time. And by its time, not the time that the thing itself was published. Oh no, it's the time that the localizer heard some goofy meme that he or she wants to include because it's so funny to them that day. So yeah, long story short, arrogant localizers are a huge pain in the rear end. We see a lot of problems, a lot of bad translations coming from these people, as they deliberately mess up translations in order to push their own personal, political or social agendas. And honestly, it's not that difficult to learn enough Japanese on your own to at least be able to start translating these things yourself, or at least be able to start picking out, hey, that sounds funny to me, let's look at that sentence a little bit more carefully, which is often what you only have to do. After all, as arrogant and gaslighting affinity these people are, they only manage to mess up a couple of lines per episode, per comic, per book, whatever. So, yeah. Let's see. For basic introduction to Japanese, the Genki textbooks are what I used. I had professors to help out with that, but, you'll get hiragana, you'll get katakana, you'll get a lot of words. They have a lot of really good, useful vocabulary. There are also books written for people that are trying to take the Japanese proficiency test, which are called N and then a number. And I think there's 5 of them. So it's like N5, N4, N3, N2, N1. There are books that are designed for people who want to take those tests for Japanese proficiency that you can find. And those books are generally going to be pretty good quality, because they have to work with the current way that these N tests are working. N5 is the easiest one, and N1 is the hardest one. N1 is practically, fluent. The book that I use the most right now is N2 level. So, I'm not fluent, but I understand enough Japanese that it's like, yeah, cool, I know a lot of this. So, Kodansha's books. There's this one on idioms. There's a book on particles by Kodansha that's really good. There's a book on how to sound intelligent in Japanese by, I think, Kodansha, that's really good as well. This NTC dictionary is really good, but you want a companion dictionary to help out. And these are character dictionaries. They're not word dictionaries. For word dictionaries, I actually recommend something called Jim Breen's World Wide Web Japan Dictionary, or WWWJDIC. It is a wealth of good translation and good dictionary entries that you can use. It has multiple dictionaries. You can look up names. You can look up things by in Romaji. You can look up things in actual Japanese text. You can do drawn kanji things. You can do select the radicals in kanji things. Like, I use that dictionary all the time, and it's super useful. And they have an app and everything. It's wonderful. So I'm going to put links to all this stuff in the description, and And this is Snarkgati, or Snark Hunt, which is a mystery that I've been poking at forever. It's not high on my list of things to do, but it's a decent thriller mystery book. So anyway, and you can see that I'm still very early in the book because my bookmark's back over here. I'm sorry, yeah, my bookmark's way at the beginning, and I've gone further than this, but at the same time I keep going back because I keep saying, oh, I need to check these words out and make sure I get all the different words just right as I read through it, which takes forever. So anyway, and plus I'll often start from the beginning again when I haven't picked it up for 6 months and be like, I don't remember what happened. I mean, I kind of remember what happened, but I probably should just go over it again. Anyway, I'm rambling. Japanese is not a hard language. Reading and writing Japanese is hard because it requires a lot of memorization, but as you learn more about how the kanji are structured, you'll actually start to get a pretty good hang of them. The point where you start realizing that certain parts of characters are often phonetics, that is, they describe how it's pronounced, is a great turning point where it's oh, cool. I can now start to pronounce these. I can at least guess what the pronunciation of a character is based on which part of it is on the right. Usually, sometimes it doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. Anyway, 2 character dictionaries, as many of Kodansha's books as you can. Genki Textbooks, NTC Textbooks, and have fun. Go translate some comics or something, and you'll get pretty good at it pretty quick. That's all I really have to say. Oh, no, wait, I will say one more thing, actually. Me and Justin, a friend of mine who's also a writer, we do a podcast, and one of the episodes we actually talked about translation, and we actually have slightly different opinions on translation too, so that's kind of interesting. I'll put a link to that too in the description. So that's the Wordy Pair podcast, which is, if you know Japanese stuff, you might recognize that it rhymes and sounds a lot like the Dirty Pair, which is a science fiction novel series that got turned into an animated series that's actually quite good. Some fun pulpy sci-fi. And I like pulpy sci-fi. I mean, that's why I'm here. So yeah, it's not a hard language. People that tell you that it's some kind of crazy hard language are basically either trying to gaslight you into trusting them or trying to save their jobs from AI that won't add the garbage to the stuff that they're translating the way that they do. And it's doable. You can totally do it. You can totally make a case. Translating a language thing and doing it correctly is about making a good argument for why you translated it the way that you did. And most of these people don't have any good arguments because all they did was, add something that is completely, foreign to the original work and therefore shouldn't be in the translation, period. So there we go. Now I think I've said everything I want to say about this for today. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you like what I'm doing here and you want to support the channel, you know what to do. Otherwise, I will say have a good day, and I'll see you later. I'm gonna try to find something topical to do each day, or maybe 3 or 4 days a week. We'll see. And hopefully, I'll have some more content that'll be good for you because you'll get to hear me make stupid jokes, and good for me because it will build up a YouTube channel. Who knows? Anyway. 3 subscribers. Anyway, I gotta go. I'll see you later.